Classic video game franchises are often revitalized on modern consoles, most of the time simply as an HD remake. However, sometimes developers will be more ambitious and take on the challenge of rebooting a franchise by making a new addition to a series rather than just a one-to-one rehash with prettier graphics. Capcom gave developer Double Helix the opportunity to revive the old arcade series Strider in order to bring it to today's gaming audience, and thankfully they pulled it off. Strider is a side-scrolling action platformer where you play as Strider Hiru, a ninja whose specialty is speed. His speed is exhibited through the fast pace kept throughout the whole game. When you attack enemies, Strider will swing his sword as fast as you can possibly press the attack button. This is noticeable early in the game when enemies only take 2 hits to kill, so you can run down a hall while mashing the attack button to mow down everyone in your path. Strider's attack speed is also seen during boss battles because when a boss shows a moment of vulnerability, that's your cue to unleash fury on them by swinging your sword as fast as humanly possible before they raise their guard back up. Movement in the game is a combination of running horizontally and either falling or climbing vertically on a 2D plane. Strider can use a hook blade to latch onto any surface, so if you want to climb a wall, you can. If you want to hang from a ceiling so you can dive bomb an enemy from above, you can. Strider's available skills to take advantage of, like his speed and maneuverability, make the player feel like they really are playing as a highly trained ninja, and the fluid controls of the game help accentuate that feeling. Strider's controls are not complicated, and with so many tools at your fingertips, controlling Strider makes it feel like a one-man army. The game does a great job of introducing these tools to the player so they do not feel overwhelmed with options. At the start of the game, Strider is only equipped with a few select abilities, being a sword attack and jumping around to avoid enemy attacks. Then the player unlocks one ability at a time throughout the game. This is executed in a way that the player has time to learn the new move and how to use it in ideal situations before they unlock the next one. By the time the game is at its end, Strider has tools that take up nearly every button on the controller, but the player learned them all one by one so they know how to do each one with ease. It reminded me of an efficient way to learn a new foreign language. Learn the language bit by bit, resulting in you being fluent by the end, instead of being thrown all of the information in the beginning and then only using what you think is necessary. And these upgrades that are unlocked throughout the game are actually game-changing upgrades, instead of solely boring stat upgrades. One prime example of a game-changing upgrade is a double jump, and you don't even get this until about halfway through the game. That's a huge improvement to Strider's mobility. Game-changing upgrades like this don't just help the player learn the game at a nice pace, it keeps the gameplay from getting stale. At one point, Strider could jump once and attack with his sword. Then later on, the player has a double jump to drastically change Strider's mobility, and even later he gets ranged ninja stars. Now instead of staying low to the ground and using close quarters combat, the player can entertain themselves with the new second option of flying high into the air and raining ninja star death from above. Past iterations of Strider were made for the arcades, so one of the differences between the 2014 game and the previous titles is that it had to be made to fit a console playstyle rather than that of a quarter-eating cab. Strider 2014 combines the combat and the movement of a ninja with a deep level of exploration where the player can find upgrades and collectibles such as concept art and character costumes. There is even a mini-map constantly in the corner of the screen, but conveniently out of the way, that can help the player keep their sense of direction when exploring the depths. The option to backtrack and pick up collectibles through doors that were not accessible earlier in the game gives the game a Metroid feeling. While I am personally not the type of player to spend too much time searching for collectibles, the minimap and easy movement around the world made me enticed to search every nook and cranny. Strider is visually stunning. The player moves only on the X and Y axis, but there are times when objects would travel on the Z axis, from the foreground into the background, that will lead to some surprising cinematic moments. The game takes place entirely in a futuristic city setting, with the only real environment change being the underground sewers. However, these areas do not seem to get stale. Instead of the world becoming tiresome and leaving the player desiring something new, in a way it makes the player feel familiar and feel at home in the city. This may be because of the minimal backtracking moments and the level of exploration that is encouraged throughout the game, so really the player gets to know the world and couldn't picture the game taking them outside the city because it wouldn't seem right. Also, the city and sewers have a dark color palette, but that is contrasted by the neon color hits of Strider and his various multicolor powers. This combination of darkness and bright colors makes the game's visuals not too depressing or gloomy, as well as not too saturated or overwhelming. When it comes to the story of Strider, the narrative is not too heavy, but it doesn't need to be. Just like Strider's upgrades and new moves, the story is presented in a great way. The game begins with no backstory as the player is thrown into the city and immediately takes control of Strider. Rather than forcing the player to watch boring cutscenes that detail the diplomacy of the city and other stuff that always sounds too complicated and political for the player to care about in a fictional world, the player learns what's going on in the city that caused Strider to start dropping fools through intercom segments by military leaders as they drop hints that lead towards the realization that the city is under a dictatorship where the citizens are treated as slaves. These audio segments happen as you are playing, so you can progress through the game and learn the story at the same time, instead of having to watch long cutscenes while you are itching to get back into the action. However, the game does have a few cutscenes sprinkled here and there, usually to introduce a boss fight, and sadly they are the weakest part of the game. It is noticeable that the quality of the cutscenes were not held at a high priority among the creators of the game. When characters are shown and are talking, their mouths don't move. Thankfully, the cinematics don't last long and are few and far between, but it is really bizarre to see the people in front of you talking and showing bodily emotion, all while holding the same facial expression and not moving their mouth once. In conclusion, Strider is a fantastic ninja game that has some moments of genius game design. It took me about 5 hours to complete the main campaign my first time through, but could easily take less time on a speedrun, or more time if the player wanted to find all of the collectibles. It is an impressive piece of art, both visually and by way of smooth gameplay. I can see myself replaying this game multiple times and coming back to it years down the road, as it is an instant classic. I recommend it to anyone who enjoys video games, the Strider series in particular, and would love to play as a quick and acrobatic ninja. And who wouldn't want to do that? Strider gets a 5 out of 5.